battle.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the all new Turin Giants podcast. This time, episode number 215. We are available on all podcasting platforms as well as YouTube. You unfortunately cannot see the face of one of our guests, but that's what he does, and that never really stops people from listening to him. My name is Farhad. I'm the host that loves you most. This is the second attempt at a podcast, and Rav, thanks for coming back, man. I mean, he's doing such a huge favor because I fucked up with the audio. Anyways, let's do a little roll call. Thank you, man. Thank you, Rob. We got Rob joining us from across the pond. We have Dash, we have Lucas, and myself. We're very excited. We will have a special guest coming very soon. His name is Jack Gallagher, and that sounds like a made-up name. I don't think he's real. He wrote an article about the situation with the sporting director at Juve, which a lot of people are very interested in by hearing. He will be joining us a little later. Before we get into the serious episode, let's do a little drink roll call. I'm sipping on some coffee. What you sipping?
I have a lovely Stella Artois from Belgium. It's like the go-to beer. Yeah.
Dash, what you drinking there?
A cup of hopes and dreams, but it's kind of empty right now. So I hate to break it to you guys. Darn. Snap.
Damn it.
What's up, Lucas? How you doing, buddy?
Good. I got some decaf coffee and then some
God.
AG1.
We need to mute his ass. I saw a meme some while ago. What's the two best times to drink decaf coffee? Never and nowhere, or something like that. But anyways, we understand. You have a weak heart with, I don't know.
I already had my mushroom coffee right before, so I didn't want to get too caffeinated.
Wow.
I got you. Mushroom coffee. Interesting.
I think that's a Midwest thing. That's a Midwest thing. I've never heard of that before.
He's tripping balls right now. Of course, Alessandro Belpiero will chime in. He's the boss of this podcast. There's nobody above Alessandro Belpiero. Rav, before we get into the Juve stuff, you need to tell us about your adventure in the greatest goddamn country on earth. How was your trip to America, buddy?
It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I know you guys said you're going to freaking Oklahoma. I was like, yeah. And it lived up to every one of my expectations. Americans are super friendly. Even if they don't like you, they are friendly and polite. The best freaking customer service I've had in my life. The food was huge and amazing. And I put on a lot of weight and I freaking loved every pound of it. Just had a great time. I'm looking forward to coming back sometime soon.
So that was the political answer. If you guys want to hear Rav's actual answer, I got it right
You
here.
should have heard him offline.
No, I know you should hear him offline, but this is. So I asked him on Twitter, guys. I was like, Rav, what's your thoughts? He's like this.
That's right. Freaking redcoats over here.
I know.
Coming to our country, stealing our women.
It's that Southern hospitality. Even got Rav, guys. Come in here, get you some nice Oklahoma barbecue. Get you some of the stuff here. Get you some mashed
barbecue.
Fries, some potatoes.
All of it, man. Amazing.
Sweet baby Rays.
I mean, back in the day, we, in America, the big portions were normal because people will take them. Will take them to go, but then people realize I can just finish the whole plate. And I literally have people visiting from Europe, and one of my friends thought the big cup of Coke, he thought it was for the table, and he thought we would get the smaller cups to pour it in. But no, that's us.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, okay. It's how it is. Our good friends from Europe, you come to the United States, we fatten you up before we send you back. So you've been.
And we're grateful for it. We are grateful for every single sip, every single mouthful. Thank you all very much.
Come for the Statue of Liberty, leave for the diabetes.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Stay for the diabetes.
We send you with a mock version of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence that you get. Just send you back home.
Wrapped around a Pepsi can.
We just. The only thing we require is if you tell us if you have any oil. That's it, and we're good.
Which y'all don't.
Sadly not.
All right, guys. We got a few questions from Twitter here, and thank you guys for the new questions. But since we couldn't record yesterday, we'll kind of run through the questions because Rob is unfortunately limited on time. So we'll ask him a few questions here. So Patrick was asking yesterday about Rabiot. I know he says that Rob likes his French Duke Rabiot, but what are your thoughts on bringing him back?
I gotta say, just feel I need to clarify. My love for Rabiot is very much tongue in cheek. So it's I appreciate the guy 100%, but in terms of keeping him for another season, like I was saying yesterday, I think that is money that can go elsewhere. That is money that we need for different things. I think apparently he wants like 10 million euros a season or something like that, which seems just too high considering that we're not broke or anything like that, but we're financially up against it. So my general opinion is let him go somewhere else. And we have, 3 or 4 young midfielders coming through right now, and we can, I know that they're not ready to sort of take over yet, but I'd sort of do that than keep Rabiot. I don't know if you guys agree, but
I failed to introduce people to Rav's Twitter page, which is Juve News Live. Amazing, you're doing amazing work. Made me unfollow a bunch of other news pages. But from what you're hearing, and I know I asked you yesterday about the most reliable sources, and we'll get into that. But speaking of reliable sources, I know something about Sergei Milinkovic-Savic popped up a few days ago, and I mean, at this point, we've been after him for 4 years or something like that, right? At this point, are you sensing anything that's actually going to happen?
All the reports that have come through are from places like, no disrespect, but they're from places that I wouldn't particularly trust. I mean, I share the news because, I'm hoping deep inside that maybe he does come, but it's from places like Calcio Mercato and like Tutto Mercato Web and places like that, which are more unreliable than reliable. So I would never go by any of those. But
gotcha.
I'm just waiting.
Give us top 3 sources that are kind of hinky.
Like I was saying, I think it's changed a lot. Me and Tarek put together a guide about 5 or 6 years back, and that one was pretty accurate, but so much of that has changed. But I would say top of the pile is probably Romeo Agresti, who's just brilliant. He sort of breaks a lot of news before anyone else. He sort of knows his stuff. There's a guy who writes for Gazzetta who is always pretty accurate, Giovanni Albanese. He's got a pretty good track record. And I think if you kind of want to combine the third position, I would go with like Sky Italia and Fabrizio Romano. And I know that they get a lot of their news from other places, but they tend to get it only when they know that something is definitely happening. They don't really like to get it wrong. So those are kind of my top 3. Oh, and I would also mention,
what about some of less than reliable sources? Can you tell us to avoid? What did you, by the way, what did you call Sun newspaper in your description?
It's toilet roll, man. That's the worst. It is just it's the absolute biggest pile of shit, that newspaper. I would say, you know what? I'll dig out the reliability chart and I'll update it, because I think out of that, there's maybe about 3 or 4 places that are reliable these days. The rest is just absolute shit.
But you mentioned also yesterday that there's a newspaper that actually cleaned up their act, right?
Tutto Sport. They used to be dreadful. They used to be like Messi to Juve is possible, that kind of stuff. And you're like, okay. But they have gotten better and they have cleaned up their act a little bit. There's less of that sensationalist stuff and they're kind of more on the money. And again, they try and only introduce stuff when they think there's a good chance of it happening. And they've really seriously reined in the wild rumors. So I give them respect. They're doing a better job than they used to, I think.
Okay. Boys, any questions? Let's talk a little bit about Bologna. I know we kind of missed that 1-day mark, but if you guys can chime in with your thoughts on Ealing Jr. while I pull up his stats from the game. What did you guys think about the game?
Yeah, totally. We can talk about it. Guys, if you want a more in-depth, Dave and I go like 50 minutes right after the game for an instant reaction on the YouTube if you guys want to check that out. But the thing is like, I think we've kind of agreed on this team, and a lot of people also, I want to say more credible Juve commentators instead of, there's some that I don't really rely as credible, but I think we kind of come to the understanding with the next gen and the youth. It's a double-edged sword. You get the spark, but you also run the risk of the errors that come with it. So again, Illing and Sule, great 5 minutes, honestly, when they first came in, totally changed the game. But then again, you have, I call him the Reaper of Ankles, Illing Jr., where he absolutely sent 2 guys to the Shadow Realm with just filthy cuts. The thing is like, did everything right, but the finish wasn't there. I loved the chance creation for the first goal. Same thing with Sule, where it's like, you got to get into basics when it comes to it, where touch, slot through. You can argue the same thing about Fagioli. It's understandable, and I think Allegri mentioned it in his post-game interview where he's like, hey, look, I'm not throwing these kids under the bus. It's understandable. They're youngsters. They're young. Stuff like this happens. I think that's one of the things where it's like the shining light with Bologna. But for me, the one thing that really kind of irritates me is just, and we covered this, I think we covered this on Saturday, where we broke down over the statistics of Juve's attacks. We keep attacking through the left. We have to start doing stuff through the right side because Kostic's legs were gone. Like you saw it where Chiesa accidentally nutmegged Kostic, where Kostic misread the ball or something. It goes through his legs, and you see him fall down. And I'm like, this dude needs a sub. And I don't mean it disrespectively at all. Kostic has been a baller, but the problem is that, and this is partially to blame on Allegri, also partially to blame on some of the players as well, where you look at it and instinctively everyone just keeps pouring onto that left side. Like, for example, in my opinion, folks, I don't think Kostic and Chiesa can both play on the left side of the field because they're kind of like the dance partners that can't synchronize with each other.
Seems a bit crowded with 2 of them.
It seems crowded with both of them. And then, like, for example, you look at some of the plays, the crosses that happen in that game. Chiesa hogging that left side leaves Milik to cover the near post and then the far post, which I've seen so many times, and I think we can all pull videos on Twitter where there's balls going into the far post and there's no one there. And the closest person that's there is Cuadrado, who's at the 18-yard box. And the thing is like, you can't, for me, I can't throw Cuadrado under the bus for that because Cuadrado isn't supposed to be covering the far post. Usually when you're running a 2-striker set, one watches the near, the other one watches the far. But with DiMaria and Chiesa, where they're not naturally good support strikers, they're kind of all over the place. And that's kind of like the negative to Allegri's creative freedom for those two, where instead of having them disciplined on one spot, because you see it, Milik and Vlahovic and even Moisey hog that near post, and there's no one there for the far post. So if I'm a defending team, stack the left or stack my right side because Juve's attacking through the left, stack my right, force a crossover to nobody, and then ball gets recycled or etc. So if you guys noticed it in the clips, especially the first half and up towards the equalizer, we're spamming everything through the left, send crosses over, and then Cuadrado's kind of stuck in no man's land where he's like, do I go for it? Because if I go for it, I leave us vulnerable at the back because Kostic and Chiesa are already both pushing up. You just have this huge gap of space there. And it's just, honestly, that's been the recurring theme for April.
Gotcha. Yeah, man. We mentioned yesterday that there was 100. By the way, we don't know how true that is. Oh, our guest is here. We're gonna let Jack in while we finish our thought. We'll be right with you, my friend. Hello. We mentioned yesterday that we couldn't figure out if the Juve actually used 100 different formations or their players were just used in different spaces, which get also that's nobody can really check that. So we'll kind of like leave that with
we were talking about how we haven't seen like a true starting lineup since the last season of Allegri. Sarri was playing around. Pirlo had 38 different combinations of lineups. And then you saw Allegri again with all these injuries as well, having a hard time being able to find like a set 11 guys.
Yeah. Well, Jack, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you.
Jack.
How are you all doing?
Good. How about you?
Good, Jack. Hope you're doing good.
We should probably let you know. This is going on YouTube. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'm grand. Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, all good.
Awesome. Jack Gallagher, he has one of the coolest Twitter names I've ever seen. At Calcio Loves Jack, if you want to follow him. It's so funny because yesterday we tried to record with Rob, and your article popped up literally 5 minutes before we started recording, and he posted it on his Twitter. And then he said, I was like, can we get Jack on the podcast? He said, yeah, we kind of were in touch. I don't know how good you guys know each other, but there's kind of a relationship.
Maybe
Rob made it up in his head, but you're kind of a friend of a podcast now, so welcome.
Oh, well, it's nice to be a friend of something, so it is. Yeah, we go way back early Juve Twitter days.
Exactly.
Back when I was first on Twitter. Yeah.
Where are you joining us from? Because we literally spoke on Twitter for like a day. I don't know anything about you.
So I live in Ireland, so I do. A place called Derry in Ireland. I don't know if you've watched that Derry Girls TV show, but I live there where that was set.
Awesome. Fantastic. Yeah. I've seen that. It's a great show.
It's a great talk. We don't know what they're talking about.
It's on Netflix. Yeah,
awesome.
I'd recommend it.
So you clearly specialize in the world of calcio, but what's your primary team that you focus on, or do you just do all of them?
So I'm more general across European football in general. So I actually do some transfer stuff. Would mainly focus on the Italian league for that, and then outside of that, I do like a lot of editorial stuff and off the website as well. So I do.
Have you ever been to the Juve Stadium?
I haven't actually. It's on the bucket list. So it is. The few times that I've seen Juventus in person have all been in England. So they have. So I think the most memorable one was probably when they played Spurs at Wembley when DiMaria scored and Higuain scored. That was a great one. And the first one I ever went to was a really random one. It was when they played Sunderland. And it was back when they just got promoted from Serie B back in those days. I think it's probably when that training jersey is probably from Farhad. It's probably that year. Yeah, it's probably that year. Yeah. So I think Christian Molinaro scored in that game.
Oh my goodness!
My God,
that's awesome. Well,
what a player!
You're overdue for a trip, man. Let us know how we can help. We know a bunch of people there at the stadium, including one of our guys who lives in Turin, and he has the season ticket. He will help you out. I don't know about financially, but we'll literally get you there. We'll walk you in. I don't know about the financial part of it.
We're not that big yet. We're not that big yet.
Anyway, so before we get into the whole article about the sporting director and the movement around there, Allegri trying to get into that spot, we will grill you all about that. I wanted to bring up something we discussed at length yesterday. So, for example, our Juve's form in the last 10 or 8 games roughly, it varies. The stats vary here. So we have 1 win in 8 games, which I personally do not remember last time we did that. We have not scored multiple goals in 10 games, more than 1, and we have 14 defeats all season. I remember that. I'm old enough to remember when we had 3 defeats all season, and now we're coming up on 14. What's going on, Jack? Are you hearing anything? Any inside sources? Just give us a little bit of wow us. This is your audition for the next podcast.
I don't know if I got wowies, but the main one I've heard is how unhappy Vlahovic is right now with the situation, and it seems pretty certain that if Allegri stays on as manager, then he'll be pretty actively trying to force a move away in the summer. And it feels like there's been a lot of reports quite similar to that about a lot of different players. We've seen the ones about DiMaria there the other day. I've seen some things about Chiesa as well. And it feels like it's very much the manager versus all of the best players and all the players you would actually want to stay at the club next season. I think they're kind of at a point now where perhaps they're looking and thinking, well, who do we back? Do we continue to back Allegri, which I think has been the long-term plan, and it's been very much like we need consistency and we need someone to be there for a long time to build around. But if you have so many players that you're also looking to build around who don't want to be there while this manager's there, then tough decisions have to be made.
Well, I mean, backing your manager is good for short term when he needs it. When we are seeing no improvement, it gets to them. It must be weighing on them. I mean, everything rests on Europa League right now. I feel like the decisions will become a little more concrete once we play that first leg, which I don't know. I don't have much hope for that. Maybe we'll go for a draw. But anyways, are you seeing the concrete movements, or is just hearsay from like Vlahovic wants to move away? Are you seeing something concretely more now?
It's more from his representatives that are trying to put feelers out. I think they've been quite active. We've had a few reports over the past few months where his representatives are quite keen to move him, and perhaps feel that decision to go there in the first place was probably the wrong move. He did have two big options last January, and he picked Juventus over Arsenal. And when you look at where Juventus are now and you look at where Arsenal now, it's pretty easy from his perspective to look and think, why did I do that? Why did I bother picking Juventus when Arsenal now seem like they have an identity, they have a young squad that he would fit in perfectly for and things. And yeah, it feels like a player like Vlahovic is someone that obviously hasn't played well recently. Obviously his confidence is completely dipped and stuff, but the talent is definitely there. And you would like to think that if you went and backed Vlahovic and Chiesa and co over back in Allegri long term, you're probably going to get more out of Vlahovic and Chiesa than you are out of Allegri long term, because he's had 2 years. We know what Allegri is. We know what he's done. There's been no signs of any improvement. Like you were saying when I just popped in here, you still don't know who the team is. You still don't know what the starting 11 is. It feels like he plays three at the back one week, and the next week he's playing 4-4-2 with two centre mids out wide, and it feels like he's constantly trying to find something that works. But after 2 years of trying and still not finding it, it feels like it has to be a change there.
Seems like that should be done at training time, not experimenting in important games where we end up losing. We're out of the Coppa Italia. It was a very winnable game. That's what pisses me off, is that like you said, the talent is there. It's just we don't know. He doesn't know what to do with it. Are you hashtag Allegri out?
I'm not hashtagging yet, but
Not yet.
I'll probably just type Allegri out. But
I think. Talking... Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just kind of like, look, I did want it to work. Like I did want Allegri to work, because I think one of the big issues since Allegri left originally has been the fact that Juventus have had a manager. It's not worked immediately. They've sacked him. They've went in our direction. It's not worked. They sacked him. And I like the fact that they picked someone and we're like, okay, this is our guy and we're going to trust him. But it's very clear at this point that it feels like they picked the wrong guy. I think the one that really, really kind of irks at me a bit is how Lazio have looked so good this season and how good they were against Juventus in that game at Stadio Olimpico. They were incredible in that game. And you're watching a game like that and thinking, okay, the reason why they were so good in that game is because they got Sarri last season. They gave him a year to work it out. They gave the players a year with Sarri to work it out tactically. And this year they started to really, really work out. And it feels like, well, maybe if Juventus had done something like that and gave Sarri a season, then maybe you could have been in that position with Sarri now, where you're playing incredible football with these players and there's a full buy-in there, which there isn't under Allegri.
I think it's the same with, sorry not to cut in, but I think it's the same with Pirlo as well. Like we have this kind of reputation of that we sort of built 9 years of success, and then anyone who came in, the very bare minimum was that we had to win Serie A and qualify for the Champions League, obviously, but they've kind of got into that mindset of I think at least under Agnelli, that they wanted instant success. Everything had to be like, okay, we're going to bring this coach in, and they don't necessarily back them with the right players, but they want the success straight away. And if it doesn't work, right, you're out. We're bringing someone else. And like Jack was saying, if they backed Sarri maybe for longer than a season and maybe got him the kind of players that he needed, maybe he'd still be there now. And I think they tried to rectify that with Allegri. But the problem with Allegri, I feel, is that, again, what Jack was saying was that there just doesn't seem to be an identity to that team. There doesn't seem to be, you go back to when he first coached, there was a clear identity. There was an idea about what it is that he wanted to achieve with that team and who played where and how he was going to play. And lately, I know it's not all his fault, but with the injuries and everything else, it just feels like it's a case of, okay, well, this player goes here, and this week we'll play 3-4-2-1, and then the next time it's, I don't know, 3-5-2, and then it's something else. And from what I remember, the idea was to play 4-3-3 at the start of the season, build the project around Vlahovic, and now, like we're near the end of the season, Vlahovic is fit, but on the bench, and we're playing 3-5-2, and I think that is kind of like a kind of a microcosm of exactly what has happened and what has gone wrong with Juve this season, at least.
The season is almost over. We're still playing around with formations. That's not a good sign.
Mm.
Well, so the thing is, I kind of want to chime in and kind of look at it from a higher level per se. So a lot of, and I don't like singling it out to a single entity, but if you look at all the correlating factors of it, the guy that sacked 3 managers was Fabio Paratici. He sacked Allegri the first time. He sacked Sarri right after, and he sacked Pirlo and then resigned when Agnelli was like, no, we're bringing back Allegri. So the thing is when you look at it, so back in 2018, 2019, Allegri kind of mentioned where he's like, look, I took this team as far as I can. We need a reboot. We need to refresh here. He kind of mentioned that originally back then, and that's when, because again, Paratici took over as sporting director mid-season, because Beppe Marotta said, hey, you guys signed Ronaldo. I didn't want to do this project. I'm out. Like, I'm leaving. So he left right before the January transfer window, I believe. Again, folks on the internet quote me, double check that. But the thing is Paratici kind of had this weird, let's do flash in a pan. Let's do this. Let's Let's bring in this. And none of it made sense if you looked at his transfers. Like, for example, in my opinion, I think 85 million for De Ligt was an absolute overspend for a central defender because I'm old school, so I don't believe defenders are worth as much as strikers are. We can argue, we can sit here and debate about it all day. Totally get it. But we overpaid for him, overpaid on his wage as well. And then you bring in Aaron Ramsey as well for a very high wage. And then you bring in Rabiot. And again, Rabiot's having an incredible season this season, but prior to, And then, like, for example, Paratici, he can say whatever he wants. We all know he wanted to go all in for Guardiola. It blew up in his face, and he's like, all right, well, let me take Sarri, because Sarri's like...
Jack, do you confirm Dash's speculations that we were trying to go for Pep?
I think it's the dream. I think it was always the dream from like day one. I think with Agnelli in particular, that it felt like it was always just going to be a dream. Though it's a bit like I remember years and years and years ago where Toto Sport were reporting like front cover Messi, it's possible, and like it's that sort of thing where you want it to be possible, but it was never going to actually happen.
It's never.
We just talked about this. Rob, we were asking Rob what are the most reliable sources, and he said that Tutto Sport would literally bring Messi to Juve, and the news would disappear the next day. So but they've kind of cleaned up the act, I think.
But, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then when you look at it from that, where they wanted to go that way, that was the dream. Obviously, it's not possible of it happening at that point in that perspective. But the thing is and then they kind of go for Sarri, and though we can talk about Sarri's tactics and the way that he manages squads is one thing, but like, for example, Sarri personality-wise didn't fit the corporate Juve, because Juve is a very professional organization. Again, all managers need to be dressed up properly. Dudes showing up in pajamas half the time for managing matches. It's kind of what the consensus was. So, and then again, it's, Champions League or bust because you have Ronaldo on the squad, and then but Paratici brings in all of this. We sold Joe Cancelo for Danilo. We did a bunch of things like that. We really sold Cancelo to balance the books. But then it doesn't work. And then you could tell, because Chiellini even mentioned it, where it's like, I kind of get what this guy is trying to coach us, but it doesn't make sense. And then again, Sarri leaves saying a lot of these players are uncoachable. all right, cool. So sorry, Paratasci's like, I don't have this, and then gets rid of Sarri. So then again, there's no real options in 2020, 2021 on the coaching market. So and then Paratasci looks and watches the Real Madrid Champions League triumph with Zidane and is like, maybe I should do that. I'm just joking. Here's a joke, but he brings in Pirlo, and then you bring Artur, which originally was a Sarri-esque player, a possessed-based midfielder, and then it's like, here you go. And then they're also like, Pirlo, do you want anything? He's like, I guess we could look at McKennie. So and then McKennie comes in, and then it's like you have a really weird squad composition in the 2020-2021 season. And then again, consistency. There's no consistency as far as how the squad plays. Pirlo would have the team go on very good hot streaks and then very, very ugly streaks as well. Like, for example, for me, I still remember that back pass Artur did against Benevento that we lost that game at home 1-0 because Arthur essentially assisted the other team.
He gave the assist basically, right?
Pretty much. So it's like, and that's the thing. And guys, if you watch our Romeo Agresti podcast, he said it too, where he's like, Pirlo had great ideas, but also really, really bad ideas at the same time. So it was one of those things where they wanted to go with a little bit more stability. Paratasci and Nedved weren't really big fans of Allegri because, again, they wanted his dismissal back in 1819. So Agnelli is like, he puts his foot down. I need some stability because we're going like this. And then he brings in Allegri. Paratasci resigns, goes to Tottenham, and, story continues. And then the other thing, though, is Allegri's going into the season with, okay, I have Ronaldo, Dybala, and etc. And then first game with Udinese, Ronaldo's like, I'm out. See ya. And I personally, I wasn't a big fan of the Cherubini hire. I understood the Riva Bene hire because they wanted to kind of constrict the books a little bit more. But again, with Cherubini, he was, a scout that just gets promoted up. And Juve was promoting within at that point because you lose Beppe Morata, you promoted Paratasci. You lose Paratasci, you promote Cherubini, which I thought was poor planning on Juventus's part. Because the thing is without, and this is how important the sporting director is, because even in the United States with our sports, the GM is the big cog for every professional sports team. Because the thing is for the last 4 or 5 years, we haven't had a concise project through a sporting director.
There's a vacuum in there.
It's a huge vacuum in there where it's like now you have Cherubini who's trying to do his ideas. And then again, they see it in the Vlahovic purchase. I still think allegedly in my mind was kind of like oh shit, we need to get him before he's gone kind of purchase, because Juve never spent that much money in January. It's insane for them to drop 80 million like it's nobody's business. So they kind of do an oh shit, but the problem is they don't have all the pieces built around Vlahovic. The squad's not built to bring in someone because Italiano's play style, which made Vlahovic cook, is totally different from what Allegri does. And it's one of those things where oil and vinegar per se, and those two don't mix that well. And that's where we kind of start getting into it now. And then the problem is, again, Allegri currently has players from 3 separate regimes. You have the Sarri players, you have the Pirlo-esque players that came in, and we shipped some of those out. And we kind of have Moise Kean, Locatelli, Vlahovic that were brought in recently, and then some Allegri players that he wanted with DiMaria and Paredes, which obviously this one, Paredes is definitely on Allegri for being a flop because he wanted him. He came in, didn't perform. We can debate all of that.
All right,
but
I got a question for our guest. Just finish up your thought.
No, I'm good. I'm done.
Good, thank you, man. By the way, oil and vinegar reminds me to buy it today. Just Jack Dash mentioned the whole story about the sporting director. So if you want to check out Jack's article, go on our @Juve podcast on Twitter. I've retweeted it. Check it out. 90 minutes. Technically, it's 90min.com. Of course, there's some people who are, telling you it's fake news, blah blah blah. But here we are. You can clear the air. You're saying that there's a possibility of Allegri moving to a managerial position, right? So there's questions underneath. We won't go into the details, but people want to know. So we'll take some questions. Are you okay answering a few of them here?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
cool.
Why not?
So AJ is asking, which coach would Allegri click with as a sporting director?
In terms of who you would click with, I think.
Of course, it's a tough question because you don't know. But like, what's your opinion?
In terms of someone who could click with, I think obviously you would want someone with a similar tactical mindset as him.
So someone really old.
Yeah. Trapattoni or someone. But in terms of what I would perceive to be a better hire and someone who could maybe bring a different philosophy while also having the kind of stability above him that Allegri can provide is, I think someone like Roberto Di Zerbi or someone would be a really fun hire for Juventus. I think
favorite.
Yeah, I think he's a completely different type of football. I don't think he has the ego attached to, like, I don't think Conte could come on, for example, and work under Allegri. I don't think that's a ego composition that really blends together. Whereas I think De Zerbi maybe would see it as like a big step up and be willing to have someone above him like an Allegri who's been there and done it as a manager, and can take some tips, some pointers from him, help out when as and when, but you would also have a bit more of a youthful exuberance about the style of play that he's playing, a bit more modern style of play. And we've seen it Brighton as one thing with Juventus, somewhere to Brighton. When he's seen a guy like Evan Ferguson, who's only 18, 19, very, very young, but when he's good enough, he's old enough, he's come in, he's played for Brighton a lot, and feels like one of the big frustrations throughout the season has been seeing someone like Eileen Jr., who came off the bench the weekend and looked really lively and really, really sharp. I know he didn't score that chance that he created for himself, but there was definitely some positive signs there and like a wee bit of energy that he was providing that some other players haven't really provided. And it feels like someone like De Zerbi would come in and just give those players the ball and let them play and play them as consistently as possible.
So I was just going to chip in and just say, I feel like Juve kind of had all these years of quote unquote stable coaches, like Lippi and, like you were saying, Trapattoni and Capello and then Conte and Allegri. And then they kind of sort of snapped and like reacted and thought, you know what, everyone wants to play this kind of fast moving, high pressing, move the ball quick kind of game. So let's take Sarri because he's famous for that. Okay, that didn't work out. So let's try Pirlo, who has these ideas. And again, that doesn't work out. So let's just go back to what's always worked in the past. And then I just wonder if they would take that risk again. I would love to have someone like De Zerbi, or we were saying yesterday, someone like Igor Tudor, just kind of who sort of brings the best of both worlds, who can kind of balance it a bit. But with Juve, it always seems like, no disrespect because it's the club that I love, but it always feels like it's pragmatism first. It's get the points first. And that has worked for so long, but football has kind of evolved. And I think to myself, how long can we keep having that approach? When do we start throwing caution to the wind and say, here's a coach, let's back him for 3 or 4 seasons and try and change the way that we play?
Yeah, and I'm with you there, because the thing is like one of the reasons why Sassuolo and Brighton are really, really successful is because, like, for example, if you look at the director from Brighton, you look at the director from Sassuolo, which we're linked to allegedly, they have a very, very great scouting network. We can also say that about Guntoli and Napoli as well. Like Graham Potter, a lot of Chelsea fans hate the guy, but prior to him going to Brighton, had them at 4th on the table. And again, playing almost kind of like a similar football to De Zerbi, but De Zerbi and Graham Potter are almost kind of like the same philosophy. So when they both, interchanged, it worked. But Brighton and Sassuolo and Atalanta, and we can argue Napoli too, are very, very good at picking youth products and then having the system established where they come in and they interject. Like, I know someone was mocking me on one of our live streams when I said, guys, look at Brighton's squad, like as far as their sporting director and their scouting, it's actually pretty good. And they've been building it since they've gotten promoted. And progressively, as the years have gone on, Brighton has been growing across the Premier League, where, when they first came in, they were battling for relegation the first 2 or 3 seasons. And now they're starting to contend for the Conference League spots.
Sorry, can I just quickly ask Lucas a question? Because when I mentioned Tudor, he kind of like nodded, and I was like, "But where is his head right now?" So I'd love to know.
No, you're right. No, I mean, I was waiting for my opportunity. No, Igor Tudor for sure, or even like a Pirlo. We don't have a clear idea kind of what they were both trying to do, because they were both so different, but also very similar. I think either one of them could work really well under this pragmatic, high standard Allegri of expectations as well. So you could have somebody like Pirlo with these ideas, but not like the ideas of actually coaching and structure and how are practices run, how is the physios working, all of that stuff that Allegri knows in the back of his head. Like, this is the structure we need. We just need somebody who has like a style of play. Allegri is just we're going to have our defense and our offensive guys are just going to go out there and play. I'll let them do their thing, which works for DiMaria's and stuff like that. We were saying yesterday, but it doesn't work for youngsters, number one, and it doesn't work for someone like a Milik or Keane, like guys that are not Mandzukic's and Ronaldo's. So if you bring in someone like a Tudor who's showing great promise at Marseille, along with the rumors of Zidane going to Marseille, so maybe Tudor is on the market. But you bring in somebody like him or a Pirlo under Allegri, I think financially, and then also what they're kind of looking for in that, let's have that pragmatism, let's have that structure that we've had for so long, and let's throw somebody with fresh, new, modern ideas of soccer. I don't think it's that crazy because we're known for having the trident for 20 years in our management system, and we've not replicated anything like that. We almost did with Paratici and Beppe, and then there was that disconnect and they left. We haven't had like a strong management group with like compartmentalized roles that achieve long-term success.
People still don't know what Nedved was doing, right?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we need to also ask in this conversation, and Jack, you might know better than us, is Allegri the sole proprietor, or is he going to be like a consultant, or is he going to have someone that's like an Arriva Bene that's going to be?
Well, that's a question from. Sorry to jump in. That's a question. I just want to kind of go by the questions. Mike is asking, due to Allegri's inexperience in this role, would Juventus need to give him a right-hand man to help him along the way? If so, who do you see in that position?
Well, I haven't heard anything that there would be a right-hand man, but I do think it would make sense outside looking in on it. I think one who's been linked relatively recently, the Allegri's keen on, is Nicky Massara, who's at AC Milan. I think they need people essentially who Allegri's comfortable working with in that role, and if he is someone who Allegri likes and who would be interested in working with him, that's the sort of thing you need. I think the issue with the previous attempt of a trident at Juventus has been personality clashes and people having such different ideas, and there's been quite quick fallouts and disagreements. If you can bring in a group of people who have similar ideas and are keen to work together and are all coming in at around the same time, which you'll have at the minute with so much change much higher up at Juventus, then you could probably build a better group. And if you can build that group and have them all picking one manager together, then that will make a lot of sense. It's not something I've heard or been told. The only one that I've been told is that they are keen and interested in offering Allegri a move upstairs and the director of football, director of something sort of role moving forward. And just want to touch on as well with what Lucas was saying and what Rab was saying about the managerial choice. I think 100% would agree with both. And I think one thing that Juventus in general kind of need to realize and understand is how much players want to play for a manager with a philosophy. And this new generation of players want to play football that they feel matters. It's why managers like Allegri haven't done so well in the past few years, whereas managers like Pep, managers like De Zerbi and Potter, while he was at Brighton, as you said, Dash, that they've done so well as they play a style of football that players can believe in and want to be part of. And players like being coached as well. Players want to be told how to do things to make them better players. And when you have so many young players coming through at Juventus, it makes complete sense to get a manager in with ideas. And maybe Pirlo, that was mentioned there, maybe some of his ideas were bad, but if some are good as well and you're building a better squad and you have a better core group of players to use, then maybe that could be a way to go as well.
Yeah, and I'm totally with you there because and I hate mentioning these two teams, but when we look at Inter and AC, Pioli, you don't think he's like the greatest tactician in the world, but because of Milan's youth, how young that squad is, he kind of stepped in and became a father figure for this squad and essentially pushed them to be an underdog Scudetto last year. And then this season, they just have to beat those turd stains from the other side of Milan for a shot at the final. But the thing is, same thing with Inzaghi as well at Inter Milan. Like, take out the domestic form aside, but when you look at it, we saw them get drawn with Benfica, and we looked at each other like, "Hey, man, Benfica's about to have a field day with these guys. These guys haven't scored a single goal in open play for about a month, and they go and they hang 5 on them." Again, Benfica could have came back, arguably, whatever, that's fine, but uh, the players believe in Inzaghi. They believe in Pioli, where they're like, especially, and I give credit to Milan because, like, let's be honest, Milan isn't. You look at like the top sides in Europe, and Milan's not, an incredible side or anything like that individually wise, but how the players get behind Leao or how the players get behind Hernandez, and like how you have like again Salamakers looking like prime Maradona when he dribbled through 4 Napoli defenders, where it's like you have Milan perform above expectations because no one thought they were going to beat Napoli. Even the Napoli fans were celebrating their semifinal berth, and it kind of blew up in their face. But I think, and that's where I think Jack is very, very correct, where I think the style of coaching has changed because I'm old school. So like I coach from an old school manner, but now it's kind of more so.
You beat them up.
I don't beat them up, but like I'll look at it, hey, correct your technique, correct this, where it's like now it's everybody's like, okay, or some of these newer coaches kind of look at it and they kind of cater their style to the players, where Allegri, and we can argue Zidane as well, because he came from the Carlo Ancelotti coaching tree, because Zidane was Ancelotti's assistant at Madrid before he took over Madrid when Rafa Benitez absolutely flopped. They have that old school counterattacking football. Same thing with Carlo. But I think the thing that Carlo's doing very well that Allegri never did is, like, for example, Carlo saw Vinicius Jr. and said, okay, I need to change my approach. And he made Vinicius one of the best players in Europe right now.
That's what Ferguson has been doing was doing for years.
Yeah.
They catered their style to the player.
Yeah, Ferguson was a coach ahead of his time, in my opinion.
Can I just ask real quick, is everybody with Allegri, or is everyone against? Not against, but like, is everyone Allegri? Not. I hate using that hashtag Allegri out, but does everyone want Allegri to go?
For me, right now, I don't see it being beneficial with a month and a half left in the season. For me, I need to see what happens upstairs before I can really rule an Allegri out per se, because it's just, there's too many revolving parts. Like, for example, if we get a terrible sporting director and we bring in Zidane, all the people that are tweeting Allegri out on the Juventus page are going to start tweeting Zidane out. Like, the thing is for me, I really want to see what the club does at that higher level, because that's where you can really figure out what's going on. And then we kind of move forward and judge accordingly. Am I thrilled with what Allegri's doing? No. But at the same time, if we say that we sack Allegri and we bring in a coach now, we'll have 3 or 4 games of like a rebirth and Juve has become incredible. And then the same problems will then persist to happen. So until, and the thing is, what really irritates me about Serie A is they're purposely delaying the stuff, the rulings and everything, because the more they delay it, the more it hurts with us finding a sporting director. Because if I'm a sporting director, if I'm Tare from Lazio, if I'm Guntoli from Napoli, I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, I want to go to Juve, but what's the deal? Are they going in Serie B? Are they banned from Europe? Are they getting a deduction? What's the deal? So I'm not going to take a job until I figure out what's the end game here. And tinfoil hats, people, but I really think Serie A is delaying this on purpose, or Gravina on them, just because the more that we don't have a director or a hierarchy established, the more it hurts us in the long term, because that gives us less time to plan in the summer.
That's not such a tinfoil theory, by the way. It's pretty possible. Jack, going back to you. Do you have Allegri's phone number, and can we call him?
I don't, unfortunately. I'll try to get his Instagram or a Snapchat or something for you. Sure.
I mean, he cowardly left all social media, and I can see why. Did you see the replies under every? I think it's dying down by now. I think people realize it's just so fucking stupid to post Allegri out in red letters, but that was a thing for a while. Did you post it? Be honest.
No, I didn't. No burner accounts used or anything, so they weren't, and certainly not the main account either. No, I agree with in terms of like what they do now. I do agree with Dash. there's no point in firing a manager now. It looks super unstable to fire a manager now. It looks like Leeds are going to fire Luca Gracia, and that makes that club look like a disaster. They are a disaster, don't get me wrong. They were the club that took Weston McKennie on loan in January.
Don't say that.
Definition,
don't say that. We need them to buy them. Don't say that.
But yeah, there's no point in doing it now. The team's the team. You might have, like you said, Dash, you might have 1 or 2 games where you look a wee bit better, but it just feels like there needs to be more than just a coaching change. It needs to be top down. The whole structure needs to be fixed at the club, and it all kind of needs to be done at once. And also, like, look, once everything's sorted with whatever will happen, any sort of prosecutions around the capital gains and stuff, whatever will happen there, after that, there is an opportunity for Juventus to really genuinely do a rebuild that perhaps the club has needed for quite a while. And the fact that they're going to have this opportunity this summer, it should be seen more as an opportunity as opposed to a disaster. The club's needed changes for so long. The club's needed structural changes for so long, and now's the time to do it and do it right. And the fact that you can do all these structural changes at once and have like a real idea and strategy around doing it, it could end up being really, really beneficial for the club long term. And look, it's one of these things as well where I know Juventus haven't been great the past few seasons. It doesn't look like they're going to challenge again next season or maybe even the season after that. But after how many years of success, it's quite hard to keep that going for any longer. And they did. It was remarkable they did to begin with. So we're going to have some lean years, but so long as you can have lean years and know that there's the right processes in place to make the team better long term, then I think Juventus fans will be happy enough with it.
Well, it's just very upsetting because you can't go from winning so many times. We understand the game is in cycles. You will be irrelevant for a couple of years, but what we're seeing, the style of play, it's like, how long is that going to go on? It's unwatchable. I don't know if you tried, but it's becoming 2 hours of scrolling through Twitter. We're just so used to boring games that it's becoming frustrating. And now I'm kind of scanning through your article, and yeah, I mean, it's Vlahovic and Chiesa and DiMaria, all the guys that you do want to watch. They're threatening leaving. You know?
And go ahead, Jack. I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, like that's the thing where, like I was saying, I think Juventus fans will be okay with Juventus finishing third next season so long as the football's better and they're more watchable and enjoyable. And you can see that, say, players like Schule, Moretti, Fagioli and all are getting the chances. And yes, they'll make mistakes along the way. They're young players, but if you have a plan in place to get these players and make them better over the course of 5 years, and you're maybe not winning as many titles, I think Juventus fans will be happy with it. The problem with Juventus over the past few years is they felt that the only thing that Juventus fans can be happy with is winning Serie A, when in fact, you know, the last few seasons when they won Serie A, they weren't that good. It was quite clear that there was changes that needed to be made. They were winning Serie A because the rest of the league wasn't particularly good. And then they had the few best players in the league that were kind of driving them through. But it felt like even those last few Scudettos that they were petering out over time. And yeah, moving forward, it just needs to be that the football's fun again. I think that's the main thing that Juventus fans want. They want to, like you said, you're scrolling through Twitter.
We don't want to see us lose to Monza. That's my beef. I don't want mid-table teams to come to our stadium believing they can win, which is what's been happening. Bologna, they drew us 1-1 when Del Piero came back for the first time to the stadium. I remember last year or so, it was such a big deal made, and then this performance just piss poor. And yeah, I'm just not happy about what's going on the field. If we're losing, I mean, if we're not winning the Scudetto, at least I want to see a fight for it, not breaking all the negative records. You know, which is so upsetting.
Go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say, I wonder if with everything that's kind of going on in the background, I wonder if with these kind of rumors about players being so discontent with Allegri, and there's obviously a reason these rumors are coming out, is because somebody's leaking them, or that there's something is coming out. It's not just one player, it's various players. But it just makes me think, because I remember there were these kind of rumblings the first time round with Allegri leaving, and people were saying it's Dybala or it's Allegri, and the club. I know it never it wasn't official or anything, but there were these kind of rumors that they chose to back Dybala and keep Dybala rather than have Allegri in the way that he was changing things. And I wonder if they do the same thing this time. I wonder if they would sort of say, okay, well, hang on a second, we've got Chiesa, who's like in any other team, he's going to score goals. He's going to be a fantastic player. Same with Vlahovic as well. So you got two players who are basically goal scoring, not machines, but they're getting there. And then you've got this manager who's, no disrespect to him, he's kind of got one foot in the past. So where do they go? What do they do? And I get the feeling that they would look at the investment and look at the players and say, you know what, it's kind of a no-brainer. We need to bring someone else in and get rid of Allegri.
At Frankie334 brings up a great point. He says that I believe it really suit Allegri. So now when that happens, does De Sciglio retire and become Allegri's assistant? Great point.
That's such a Frankie question too.
That would be such a smart decision to have De Sciglio taking on that Barzali role and just being the leader and just that connection from management to players.
Well, hey,
father and son combination.
You never know. We might hire Chiellini as a financial officer. Dude has an MBA, so why not? But
he's an MBA.
Yeah, he has an MBA.
Yeah.
So yeah, because
he's in the MLS, not the NBA.
No, I know, but yeah. So he actually, because he did say there are some reports where Chiellini wants to come into a managerial role. I totally got it. I'm trying to keep character, but
we do show just for us with Nash.
I know. So I think the one thing, and I wonder if you guys can agree with me on this one. I think. And I'm kind of getting a little bit frustrated with some other Juve content creators, whether it be on Twitter or YouTube or whatever, where they keep saying that we're lowering the standard and not understanding that sport has cycles. Like I personally think that a lot of the fans that are currently right now in the Juventus fandom world are, early 20s, mid 20s, where all they knew was like the 9 consecutive Scudetti. They didn't know anything prior to that. They weren't alive for or they were too young to really comprehend 2005, 2006, or even like, for example, the early 90s before we won the Europa League and made those consecutive Champions League finals and before Moggi came in. So like my irritation with it is like, if you sit here and you can say that the squad that we currently have, we can challenge in all 3 fronts, I like you, but I think you're absolutely bonkers if you really think that what we have right now can challenge teams for the Champions League and 100%. Be consistent for the Scudetto. But my issue is like, for example, if I tweet that, if I say that, hey, with this composition, we're not going there. Oh, you're just lowering your standards. That's why you're saying that Juve can't compete. I have higher standards than you.
Juve fans are really wrapped up in the aura and in the romantic side of Juve. Sometimes they can't see clearly. Criticizing the team as you're not a fan.
I gotta say, sorry, I'm just going to quickly chirp in and say,
go for it.
There is a certain, with the utmost respect to present company and all the Juventini that I follow, there is a degree of arrogance that we have as Juventini. There is a degree of we are better. Yeah, exactly. So, and the thing is, in Italy, there is no, like, you can look at teams in other countries, you can look at Manchester United and Liverpool. They are hated, but there are people that are there in the middle ground and go, okay, you know what? I don't mind them. There is none of that with Juventus in Italy. It is binary. It is 0 or 1. You either love Juve or you hate them. And because of that, that's something that I think fans tap into. So we have this kind of like turn our noses up at other fans and other, sort of teams. We think we're better than everyone else. And I think it just comes with the territory. I remember that from back in the 90s when I first started supporting Juve. Like, some of my some of the guys at uni were Juve supporters from Italy, and they were just arrogant as fuck. And I was like, wow, is this what it means? And I think that translates over. And there's a degree of that even now with fans. Like, we just expect to win. It's not realistic, not at all.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And that's the thing. What concerns me about doing a multi-year project, because, like, for example, after the first season of Cherubini and Arriva Bene, they were saying, hey, this is a 3-4 year project. Everyone's on Twitter saying, oh, where's this project? There's no fruits of this project. Oh my God, project. Where it's like, dude, Like, you got to sit there and just look at it. And then, like, for example, when you try to sit down and have a conversation with these folks, they'd look at you and be like, I can't believe you lowered your standards that low for this club. It's like, dude, come on, man. Because, like, the thing is like, when we get the new director, say that we do the entire overhaul this summer, and say that, because that guy would be absolutely insane if he says I can turn around Juve in one season. But if he says, hey, it's going to take 3 to 4 years to build this correctly, build the foundation so we can have sustainable success, because that's what took Beppe Marotta and them. It took them a bit to build the 9 Scudetti team. If we do that and we say that, I guarantee you those same fans, because they're the same fans that are yelling Allegri out, they're going to sit here and be like, 3-year project? What is this? Huh? Are you kidding me? These guys lowered the standards of, I can't believe Juventus has fallen so hard, or I can't believe they've lowered their standards.
Yeah, we're not allowed to lose. We're not allowed to not win Serie A. That's the funny thing. I look at these people. I'm like, who do you think we are? Like we won 38. That's great.
Juve has become the Amazon Prime of teams. Like we want it now. Like you can't 3-day shipping. No way. Jack, quick question for you. I know you've been a little quiet here. This article is 24 hours old now, so it's old in our lives now.
Yeah.
Is there anything on the horizon? Anything you've heard in the last 24 hours or so about anything Juventus related that maybe you haven't posted yet, or anything our listeners would love to know?
Nothing over the past 24 hours, unfortunately. I'm sorry for those.
That's okay. How reliable are the Zidane rumors? Like, is there out of the millions of rumors, is there a tiny bit of truth to that?
I'm going to be honest. Like, I think in terms of Zidane, I don't really see how the club can do it financially. I don't think there's a capacity there to do it.
What was his salary at Real?
I would guess it was in the excess of 12 mil. I would guess. Yeah, I don't think, and there's also one of the main issues with Allegri at the minute, and one of the reasons why they're looking to move him around in the club rather than just let him go completely at the end of the season is they can't afford to sack him. The wage is too high, the severance pay would be too high. They can't afford to do that and then also bring someone else in. So it's one of those things where I think fans in general need to lower expectations of name value, and I also think the club itself needs to move away from name value again, and rather than going for a Zidane because it sounds good to get a Zidane, to go for a guy who has, like we were saying before, has a bit of a philosophy and might not be the name that Zidane is, but longer term can be a better manager. And I also think in terms of Zidane as well, I don't think he fits this Juventus. If everything that Juventus fans want is for the younger players to be used, to be cultivated, for the likes of Ian Vlahovic and stuff to be improved as players, Zidane, for how incredible he's been at Real Madrid, he's always done it with veteran players, and he's had that Ancelotti system of, I will let the players basically do what they want. And because they've been there and done it so many times, they know what they do. But that doesn't work for a team like Juventus, where you'll have players who are nowhere near the level of Luka Modric, let's be real, who need coached and need to be told what to do. And it's the same problem we're having with Allegri right now, where the players aren't being told enough of what they need to do. You'll have the same problem with Zidane.
Thank you. That's it. That was my entire argument why I don't think he would work. That's all. I literally
so refreshing.
I timestamped that moment because we're gonna make a small reel out of this, and that was the best part of the podcast because
that was amazing.
Zidane is a shiny toy. But it's too early.
I got a quick question to follow up with you, Jack. There. So I'm with you where we need to kind of look more. So I want to say mid-table level coaches. I don't want to, because it's kind of a disrespect to some of these coaches that are coming up
with unknown names.
Yeah. The thing is my only concern is when you take something like that. So let's use, and there's multi-existential factors with Graham Potter and Chelsea, because again, the squad composition doesn't fit what Graham Potter runs. But do we run the risk of, like, for example, you have Chiesa, Euros champion, one of the best Italian players, Dusan Vlahovic, scoring calendar year record breaker, DiMaria, World Cup champion. Do we get to a point, because this is one of the things that we had with Sarri, where some of these players didn't respect Sarri because, I've done more than you will ever do as a coach. So do we run the risk? Because that's sometimes the risk that you run when you go into a big club where it's like the players are kind of like, this is the guy.
Yeah, so there is always that risk, but I think that's also going to be like those players are shoulder fishes like that. You have to have the wherewithal to kind of cut those players loose eventually if you're going to trust a manager in the way that Juventus perhaps need to trust a manager. The issue with Sarri is you're right, like you're coming into a club where every single player has won at least 5 or 6 Serie A titles, and then Ronaldo has won 5 or 6 Champions Leagues. Yeah. He's obviously nowhere near that stature, so maybe like that sort of composition of a squad need a manager who's been there and done it at the right place. The same way someone like Zidane for that Real Madrid team when he was replacing Ancelotti back in the day, he was kind of perfect for that because he's a player that these players grew up watching and had respect for initially, and then, like I said, they have the wherewithal to go and win the things, but it's just having the confidence that the person behind you and the person on the touchline also has kind of been there and done that and has that experience. I don't think Juventus need a manager like that because I think like we're so far removed from the point where Juventus were the most dominant team in Serie A at this point that a lot of these players haven't really been there and done it. Yes, Case has won the Euros, but a lot of those players that won those Euros have won nothing else. And Chiesa hasn't really won anything else. Vlahovic hasn't really won anything in his career, bar the goal scoring thing. Hearts. Yeah. And then Chesney's won some things as well, but it's one of those things where I think you probably won't encounter that problem. And if any player you encounter that with, and if any player seems uncoachable, like Sarri was saying before, then cut them loose. There's no point. It's not to say they've done anything recently for Juventus.
We talked. Sorry to interrupt, but we talked about. It's so tough to do these Zoom podcasts. It seems like I'm interrupting you, but if we were in the same room, it's just a conversation. So I apologize if it sounds
no
like
bother.
The whole uncoachable thing, untrainable players. We talked about it yesterday, and then I fucked up the podcast and it never got posted. But we'll bring it back. We'll bring it back in terms of. Somebody posted a TikTok video of all the mistakes Juve players made in the game against Bologna. And if one of those mistakes were made by a Real Madrid or PSG, it would be laughed at. But we are at a point where our expectations are so low that we don't even notice 6, 7, 8 misplaced passes that are not just because the player was covered or something, it didn't go through. It's literally they're passing into nowhere, hoping. One of our listeners calls it cross and yalla. It's like there's not even a plan in place. So going back to the uncoachable comment, it's like, have they plateaued, and has our coach plateaued at a point where he cannot take on a team like that? And many people said that Allegri has inherited Conte's team, which had players and the philosophy behind it. And now that he needs to build his own squad, he just cannot do it. He'll do well and at a Genoa. He'll do well enough at a mid-table team. But I feel like he's hit his ceiling. Am I wrong there?
I think it's a fair comment. I think one of the big issues for Allegri this time around as well has been that the players that he's come on and felt like he can trust, the players that were there before, they're not the same players. I think the main one of those is Cuadrado. And when those clips come up of Juventus players misplacing a lot of passes, a lot of time it probably is Cuadrado doing it, no harm to him. Like, he was a great player for a long time there for Juventus, but you can see that the performance levels have dropped a lot. And the fact that he's one of the guys that Allegri still feels like he can trust, because he's a guy who's been there and been a winner before, has proved to be a big issue for Allegri at the club.
Jack, I'm so sorry. Hold that thought. I apologize. Let's just say bye to Rav. He has to hop on, and then we'll get back to Rav. You're the man, dude. I love you. Thank you so much.
That's all good. Thanks, guys. It was brilliant listening to all your opinions and everything. It's been fantastic.
Are you going to quote yourself on your Twitter now?
Anyway, I'll Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
meeting,
you, guys.
buddy. We'll love
See
you.
you, Raf. Bye.
Take care, guys. All the best.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. I had to do that.
Fuck that guy, right?
No,
Just
love Rev. We love Rev.
Sorry, Jack. Go ahead. So you were saying that our standard now is washed up Cuadrado as opposed to a world class right back.
Yeah, you've seen it with a few of the main ones are both sides of fullbacks. Essentially, it's Cuadrado and Alexandro, who when Allegri was there originally were arguably the two best fullbacks in the league. Now they're arguably the two most detrimental fullbacks in the league at times. And the fact that they're two players that Allegri has persisted with all season because he feels like he has examples of them being really, really good players for him and feels like and hopes that they can be those players again. It's been a big crux for him all season. And the fact that he's still trusted Demons without trying to trust anyone else. You've brought it up jokingly as well with DeCilio. DeCilio's a guy been there forever. It's never been particularly great, but it's been a part of winning teams. And Allegri feels comfortable in dropping him into the team much more than he feels comfortable dropping like an Ealing Jr. or a Sule or something in a team because he has examples of them playing well before, but they're not doing it now and they haven't done it for a while. So I don't understand why he's still persisting with them.
Yeah.
Well, it's the definition of insanity, right? You keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
It kind of is, and it kind of isn't at the same time. Because, so for example, we got one of our guys that's a big viewer of us, Misak. He watches the Next Gen all the time, studies them vigorously, and a guy's not even a content creator. That's how much he loves it. Where he kind of mentioned it because he's like, Illing and these guys, they're great players, but you can still see the rawness of them. And that's kind of where Allegri's just kind of like, I don't want to take a risk at it. Because the thing is reasons why Allegri switched to the 3-5-2 is because our defenders, if we isolate them, it's ugly. It gets ugly. Because, like, for example, if you watch the Intercoppa Italia where you saw Bremer getting isolated by Dzeko both times, Dzeko absolutely cooked him. Like one-on-one, absolutely cooked him. That one goal that was offsides, he broke Bremer's ankles like it was nobody's business. But the thing is what's interesting that you guys mentioned about the PSGs and the Real Madrids is, like, for example, Modric and Kroos and Valverde, if they don't perform well or if they can't string two passes in a game, they're getting benched. Camavinga and Tchouaméni come in because those two are nipping at their heels for a starting spot. Where it's like with us, there's not really anyone there to challenge for the starting 11. And that's one of those things where I was a little bit concerned where it's like, yes, Kostic was playing very, very well, but at the same time, if Illing's not able to beat Kostic out in training, that's where I'm a little bit concerned per se. Because again, a lot of coaches, they look at training and they kind of sub things in because, like, Fajoli was able to beat out Paredes. Barrenechea was able to beat out Paredes in training. Gatti was able to beat out Rugani because Rugani used to be the de facto third, but now it's been Gatti. So it's like there's something like that. It's kind of a double-edged problem because, like, for example, Juve players don't have the bench players don't have the capability to challenge for the starting role. But at the same time, some of them are, but they're not performing well because you're either getting thrown in because someone's injured or just not consistency. And I think because Juve don't have a solid bench to really push the first team to the limit, that's why it's just kind of weird per se.
Yeah, we sent them all away. We sent Artur away, Zachariah away, McKennie away. The ones that we kept, the Moise Keanes, the Paredes type of guys, they've taken a backseat. So now instead of, like, the youngsters being those third strings they don't have to go beat out a Kostic. You're asking Keane to beat him out. You're asking other players. They're also not beating him out. So it's like the youngsters are being asked to be put into positions that they shouldn't need to be put into. And then there's that gap, like Dash was saying, we don't have a bench. We have youngsters, which is not a real bench. It's a luxury to have, but it's not going to help you win a title.
I guess we're done. Any other last minute questions, guys? I feel like we've gone over an hour and 10 minutes now.
Jack, you got to tell us what kit are you wearing?
Jack showing out his shirt.
Yeah,
I love it.
I got this quite recently, actually. It's 2003 training top, so it is.
Nice.
I was like, I'm going on a Juventus podcast. I'll pick out the best Juventus
Love
one
it.
I can find in my wardrobe, and this was it. It was this or a pink Zidane one from '97, but I'm terrified to wear it because it's got to the point where the numbers to back are starting to kind of come off slightly, and I'm like, I can't wear it again because if I wash it, they might disappear, and it might say like Zidane 2 on the back of it instead. I'm not having that.
Well, a lot of people have a soft spot for really washed up jerseys because
Hey, man.
they've been through so much. Oh,
80,
look at that.
80,
one.
85,
Oof.
85 Platini.
Oh,
So it's like even like the I don't know if I
That's
can
a
put this on the
beauty.
camera, but like the numbers on the edge are tattered, so you can see like typical
That's
80s
awesome.
jersey where it's all worn out and stuff. So
Jack, can you get Platini on the podcast?
I'll try if he's not in prison.
Could you imagine if we got him on the pod and he was in a jumpsuit? Oh, that'd be hilarious.
We had to call him Collect. Inmate from Paris jail wants to speak to you. Boys, this was fun. Jack, you're instantly a member of the family. Anytime you want to jump on, a lot of heat for the article, but we believe you, and you brought up some good points. Hopefully you're wrong, quite honestly, because we gonna burn a bridge that's called Allegri, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, keep in touch, man. We appreciate you.
Well, dude, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It was good crack, good fun.
Thank you, buddy. Dash, Lucas, thank you, boys. Everyone listening, I will post a discount, as always, 15% off on TurinGiants.com if you use the code 215. Just type in 215 at checkout. There's a really awesome Pirlo shirt that I'm trying to push, and I ordered myself some samples so I can take some photos. But you can order it if you want to do a 15% off on an unreleased shirt. No Pirlo, no party is really, really cool. If you saw Giuseppe rocking it on a couple of his live streams, it's really cool. Yeah, Dash, anything going on YouTube?
So we've got some fun stuff to get ready for the Europa League.
Yes,
Dave and I have tracked down a Sevilla podcast / YouTube channel, so we will be collaborating with those guys so we can talk about how they are the Grim Reapers of the Europa League. We've got some pregame stuff that we're going to do. Dave and I are going to film a Lecce pregame this afternoon. We'll post that some point that you guys will see it before the game actually starts. So we've got that, and then we've got our weekend call-in show on Saturdays. That is going to be a weekly thing, folks. So viewers, if you want to call in and say how much Dave and I suck at our jobs, you can do that. We'll make fun of you, but you can do that.
Please, if you're a YouTuber, if you love YouTube, this is such a cool idea that the guys do, and I've hopped on a couple of these. I don't think anybody's doing these, given the listeners the voice, because initially when your YouTube channel started, we wanted to involve the listeners more and the viewers in that case. And we've been doing an awesome job. We're slowly building a small army a la Fight Club, little minions running around. We got shooters all over the place. So if the other content creators want to talk shit, we got we got our little army. But yeah, of course I'm kidding, but it's true. We love our listeners, so please jump on the live show. It's always fun to hear listeners get mad and yell at us because of something. Lucas, you're the man. I know you're kind of in the background today, but we value you and we love you. Everybody, as always, stay hydrated, check on your friends, and Forza Juve.